Hey everybody, welcome back to the Porter Says podcast. My name is Heath. Thanks so much for joining in tonight. So in this episode, I'm going to be reviewing The Black Phone 2. I know I'm about a week late from this movie because it came out basically a week ago. I saw it a couple of nights ago at the cinema. I decided to go see it because I really loved the first Black Phone movie. And at first I thought the idea of a sequel, I was like, do we really need this? You know, was it a necessary sequel? What else could you really do with it? Because spoiler alert, you know, for the first Black Phone, the grabber, who was played by Ethan Hawke, was killed. So I was like, what are you going to do? Is this going to be a prequel, like an origin story? But no, they go very Nightmare on Elm Street like, you know, with some dream sequences. But we'll get into that in just a second. So to give a rundown of the plot, it's been about 4 or 5 years since the events of the first movie. Finney, played by Mason Thames, is, you know, kind of still dealing with the trauma of what he went through after he was kidnapped by the grabber and everything, and you know, he's taking his anger out and he's doing whatever he can, taking whatever substance he can to deal with everything that happened to him. Meanwhile, his sister, played by Madeline McGraw, I believe is her name, is starting to experience her own things. You know, she's having these dream sequences where she sees these missing kids who, you know, were at some Christian youth camp years ago, and her and Finney decide to go to this youth Christian camp to find out what's going on, and all this supernatural stuff ensues. So, to answer the question, was this a necessary sequel? Does it justify its existence? And in my opinion, yeah, it does. I had so much fun with the Black Phone 2. Watching it in this you know, the dark cinema, you know, obviously the lights go down and everything, and there was about maybe 10 other people also in the theater, and it was really, really fun because we all jumped at the right moments a little bit. We laughed at the right moments because this movie does a pretty good job at balancing, you know, the seriousness and the horror and all the supernatural stuff that's going on, and places some really, really funny jokes throughout. Now, it isn't as good as the first one. I think the first movie was, for me personally, one of the better horror movies I've seen in the last couple of years, because it really does feel like it is its own self-contained movie. It was, you know, basically a one and done. So you think, what are they going to do with the sequel? You know, what can they do? And they bring some really cool stuff to it. As I said, there's a lot more supernatural themes going on, and the grabber, played by Ethan Hawke, of course, he was excellent in the first movie and very, very creepy, but he's even scarier in this one, since, you know, he's this just ghost form and comes to Gwen in her dreams to try and essentially kill her. And everybody thinks she's a couple of these this Christian couple at this camp think that she's being possessed. They don't believe a single thing of what's going on. And it's like, oh, the devil's possessed you. Like, what the hell is going on? So, I really liked the performances of this movie. I thought Madeline McGraw was so good in the first one, but she was even better here. And Mason Thames, that kid has got it. He has so much talent, because the Black Phone was, the first movie was his first like feature film ever. He was about 12 or 13 at the time, and he was so good, and he's even better here, in my opinion. And that's, again, that's kind of a high bar, because if you give like a really excellent performance in the first one, how do you top it in the second one? And he really does. I think a lot of the scare sequences are very effective, and there's, as I think I've said, very creepy imagery. At this, you know, camp they go to, they end up getting snowed in, so no kids end up coming to it because they wanted to, you know, go there to impersonate camp instructors or something. You know, no kids are coming, so they're stuck there, and it created a really awesome atmosphere with all the snow coming in, and makes you feel really like it makes you feel cold a little bit. You know, I kind of felt a bit of a chill. And of course, you get the classic scene of where Finney is talking to the grabber on the phone in the phone booth. If you've seen the trailer, you know what I'm talking about. And it's a bit more brutal than the first one. There's a bit more blood shown. And again, the grabber is even creepier than he was in the first one. As for flaws, the first like 30 to 40 minutes do take a while to get going. Like the movie takes a while to pick up, which is, I can give it a bit of a pass because, you know, you're kind of getting introduced back to these characters, and, you know, since it's been about 4 or 5 years, you got to see where they're at, and what's been happening in their lives, how they're dealing with everything. I really like this was talking about flaws, but just to go back to positives, I love, you know, how with the character arc with the dad of Finney and Gwen, because he was quite abusive and a big drunk in the first movie. And at the end of the first one, from memory, because I haven't actually seen it since the year it came out, which was like in 2022, so that's wild. But, you know, he was wanting forgiveness at the end of it because he finally got his son back after he heard what was going on. And you see in this one, he's trying to do better. He's not drinking as much, or not really drinking alcohol at all. And he's kind of talking to Finney at one point early in the movie. He's like, don't stay up too late. Just, go to bed when you have to. Back to flaws. I do think also that there's a lot of like big reveals here that a couple of them you can kind of see coming, and not to really go into spoilers or anything, because I highly recommend you go see this in the theater. There's a certain reveal that at first I was like, oh, okay, I didn't see that come, but then I'm like, oh, how did I not see that coming? It was a pretty obvious reveal what they were going to do with a certain character and what actually happened, what caused it, I do think the finale, while really entertaining, it takes place out on a lake, on the ice lake, so everything's going on. It felt a bit rushed, personally. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more in the finale of this movie when the grabber really comes into play in this one. Also, it does take a while for him to finally appear on screen. I will say that. So, I can see some people who really liked the first movie being disappointed with this sequel. But, as someone, again, who really likes that first one, I actually wasn't really let down. I was pleasantly surprised that this movie ended up being as great as it was. Overall, I would really, really recommend Black Phone 2, because it's a really effective movie. It's creepy. There's a lot of creepy imagery, disturbing imagery, especially that one sequence. I thought Ethan Hawke was awesome as the grabber. He was scarier here. Especially with the way he looks and the makeup and everything, once you kind of see him take off the mask and stuff like that. I thought Mason Thames was awesome. Madeline McGraw. I thought Scott Derrickson did an excellent job directing this movie. He knocked it out of the park with this one. That's the end of this one. I hope you enjoyed this new episode of the Porter Says podcast. Yeah, and it's... to mention right now is that my birthday is actually tomorrow. So I'll be 25 years old. I kind of weird to say my age, but that's how old I'll be. So halfway to 50. But yeah. So hope you have a good rest of your week, everybody. Go see Black Phone 2. It deserves all the money. I want this to be a bit of a box office hit somewhat. And yeah. I'll catch you guys next time.